You're listening to the Common Descent Podcast.
Hello, Will.
Hello, David.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to Common Descent, episode 244. This episode's topic is sea turtles.
Woo!
A couple of years ago in the summer, we did marine crocs and we did sea snakes. Now, we've also done a bunch of the other marine reptiles. We did ichthyosaurs, we did plesiosaurs, we did mosasaurs. Sea turtles. We're going to talk about what makes a turtle well suited for living in the ocean. We'll discuss our modern day species, and then we will go through a history of sea turtles throughout the fossil record, an evolutionary history of the multiple times that turtles have done this. Really interesting fossil record stuff.
They're really good at getting into the ocean.
They're such strange creatures. We're going to get into it. It's going to be a lot of fun. This topic was requested, as all of our episode topics tend to be. This one by Jackie and Matt. Thank you both for your request. And also a happy World Turtle Day to everybody out there.
Yes, indeed. Happy Turtle Day.
Before we get into the meat of the episode, some quick announcements. First and foremost, this podcast is supported entirely by Patreon. Patrons who join us on the Common Descent Patreon allow us to do all of the wonderful science education-y content stuff that we like to do. We are eternally grateful, and in return, we offer live streams and bonus content and merch and all sorts of stuff on the Patreon. And at certain levels, joining us on Patreon gets you your name shouted out here on the podcast. This episode, we would like to welcome our newest patrons, Amy, Simon, and Emily.
Welcome, 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 and thank you.
Speaking of cool listeners, we got some mail. We got a postcard with a really cool old school hadrosaur. Makes me think Trachodon on the art of it. Very fun, from Eugenia, whose name might be pronounced Ohenia. I only know one person whose name is pronounced that way in person, and they pronounce it Ohenia. So I don't know. However you pronounce your name, thank you so much for your postcard.
Yeah, it's just got the duckiest bill, and I love it.
Also, there's a dragon on the postcard.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. Listeners, if you are so inclined to send us something in the physical mail, our mailing address is on the website. Thank you so much. Also, this is the last episode in the month of May, which means next time you hear from us, it will be Croc Month.
Yes.
Every summer, we celebrate Croc Month in June and Snake Month in July. When Croc Month rolls around, we will have some themed content on the podcast. We will be doing bonus episodes for Croc and Snake Month this year. Stay tuned for those. Very exciting. Over on the Discord, the Croc Chat channel will be open only for the month of June, so be sure to get all of your Croc chattiness in before the Discord channel goes away. And also exclusively for the summer, we will be reopening the Crocs and Snakes tier on our Patreon. This is a special limited time tier. Patrons who subscribe at this level get, in addition to the other bonus goodies, Croc and Snake Month stickers and support that we receive at this tier during Croc and Snake Month will contribute to charitable donations we will be making on behalf of the podcast and all of our lovely listeners toward wildlife conservation. This year, our donations will be going to our two regulars, the Crocodile Research Coalition and Save the Snakes. And this year, our third is the NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council, which helps support environmental policies around the world, here in the US and beyond, supporting legal cases and things like that for the sake of protecting environment and wild spaces.
Yeah, excited to get to contribute to a group focused on legislation.
Yeah, absolutely. More Croc and Snake Month stuff to come as Croc and Snake Month themselves roll around. But for now, let's move on to the news. Every episode, we start by talking about some of the recent news in our scientific fields of choice. Will, what news shall we start with?
My first news is about a early stem tetrapod that was younger than you might expect it to be
It was a baby.
and had a weird jaw. Younger geologically. It was sticking around longer than your average stem tetrapod.
Mm.
Yes. This is research by Jason Pardo et al. In the Proceedings of the Royal Society B Biological Sciences. And the article is a press release in Science Daily. So, early tetrapods. Tetrapods are four-legged ancestors to all of our land animals, all of our land vertebrates. These are the animals that evolved from those early limbed fish that started coming out onto the shore.
Episode 77.
When they first evolved, you had tetrapods, and then those split into the amphibian and amniote line. And in most like retellings of the history, that's kind of how it goes. Fish became tetrapods. We had tetrapods for a bit, and then those split into those two lineages, and the tetrapods were no more as their own group. You now had these two groups of tetrapods. But some of them did stick around alongside their descendants, though they did diminish during the Carboniferous, the dry period, which is known as the Carboniferous rainforest collapse, is when we see most of the replacement by the amphibian and amniote lines. This is a trend known fairly well in the northern land masses, not as well known whether this is the pattern that happened in the southern land masses, Gondwana. So this study was looking into that and doing so because of a new fossil that they identified, a series of jaw bones of a stem tetrapod from the early Permian of Brazil, about 275 million years old.
All right.
They found in total 9 jaw bones, but no other body elements that they can confidently associate with the jaws. So there are other elements around that could potentially be these animals, but not any associated with a jawbone. These jaws are unique, and we'll get into that in just a second, but based off of their shape, they do seem to be stem tetrapod and a new species, Tanica amnicola. And based off of the shape, if you have to get an image in your mind, early tetrapods, so kind of salamander shaped, probably with a slightly longer snout than your average salamander. Not long, but longer.
Sure.
And
maybe like caiman shaped.
yeah, and it like probably if that much it sounded like, but yeah, a little, just
Okay.
a little bit forward.
Mm-hmm.
And they said like probably you could expect to be around like 3 feet-ish long, somewhere in that range, but we don't actually have the body, so we can't know for sure. Based on the surrounding rocks, seemed like it lived in fresh water, which fits very well for stem tetrapod. Phylogenetic analysis connects it with earlier tetrapod groups, but it was around after most would have gone away by this time.
Yeah, that
This
its
is
closest relationships are to animals that it seems to have long outlived.
exactly. As they put it, it would have been a quote unquote living fossil for its time.
Right, in the Permian.
Yes, that there would not have been many other stem tetrapods, if any others, in its area, and it was a representative of a very ancient lineage at that time.
Yeah, because by this point, you had a whole bunch of early reptiles and early synapsids that were
Yes.
sort of taking over all the space in land ecosystems.
Exactly. This is only the second stem tetrapod group known to have survived until the end of the early Permian in the southern continents. So this is a rare occurrence of this kind of thing happening. But they did note that by this time, stem tetrapods were gone in the northern continents.
Yeah, and we have 2,
Mm-hmm.
it seems, examples in the southern continents of them not being gone yet.
So it may mean that that Carboniferous rainforest collapse hypothesis, that was when the turnover happened, may be oversimplified, at least from a global perspective. It might fit for the north, but maybe not for the south. The other thing that's getting attention is that the jaw is weird. The jaw is twisted, and twisted in regards to the tooth row. So on our jaws, the teeth erupt from the top of our lower jaw, pointing up toward the roof of our mouth. The jaw has twisted so that the tooth surface has rotated outward so that now the teeth stick out laterally out from the jaw. And on the inner surface of the jaw, there are denticles. So tooth-like scale type structures making batteries, making these toothed surfaces. Now, we do not have the upper jaw, so we do not know for sure what this lower jaw was meeting up with. But based off these features and the fact that these denticle batteries looked kind of like a grinding surface, it looks like the jaw of something that may have been eating plants or something similar to maybe invertebrates, something that had to grind up.
Yeah.
But it could be a early example of a herbivore.
Interesting. So it moved its teeth out of the way just to come up with replacement teeth?
Yeah, and I don't know if is it doing kind of like the sauropod thing where these teeth are now grabbing the plants and then this new thing is grinding it up. But yeah, it sounds like they had these kind of splayed out teeth, a very unusual situation for a stem tetrapod.
Yeah. Maybe they lived in a zoo. That's been known to happen.
Well, that's how they lasted so long, is they've been kept in.
There was a bunch of gorgonopsids at a zoo, and they were keeping these stem tetrapods around.
Now, believe it or not, this is what we evolved from.
This guy's telling me I evolved from a fish.
If that's true, why are there still fish?
It's really interesting. This is a trend that happens a lot in paleontology, that we come up with a story of, yes, this is the sequence of events that happened in the geologic record. Here's all the solid evidence for it. But all that evidence only comes from one place.
Yes.
Right. This has come up, for example, with like the end Cretaceous mass extinction, where for a long time, almost basically all the evidence was from North America and Europe.
Yep.
And so we had this picture of this event that eventually we started getting things from South America or Antarctica and going, okay, so our picture was right for part of the world.
Yes.
And this is something that has happened. It started to happen more and more frequently as paleontology has expanded beyond just North America and Europe, which is basically where most of it was happening for a long time, is that we've ended up with these very Eurocentric or North America centric viewpoints, not just in a cultural sense, but in a physical evidence sense. That's where the evidence is, and we're missing the global picture. So that's a really cool. This is one of the big benefits of paleontology becoming global and including a wider variety of cultures and countries and institutions, is that if you're only looking in a couple of continents, you're only getting like a quarter of the picture.
Yeah. Well, and it's why it's so important to pay attention to what data you're using and dealing with, because very often these narrowed views are not done on purpose, but just, I've got 200 examples in my data set that I'm in it, and it has a very strong signal, and I just haven't had the little light bulb moment to go, where did these come from? What part of the globe am I actually getting this signal from?
Yeah.
Because they're coming from 20 countries. So like that, all of that, 20 different countries, 200 specimens sounds like an excellent body of data.
But if all those countries are on two continents,
then
it's limited.
That's where you can accidentally end up stumbling into having a fairly narrow view of a situation.
Well, my first bit of news is also about a group of organisms moving out of the water and onto land, but on the other side of it. Yours was already, you're on the land side. Here, we're on the water side. This is research about some of the earliest known relatives of centipedes and millipedes and what they tell us about the transition of these arthropods onto land.
Excellent.
This is research by Derek Briggs et al. In Proceedings of the Royal Society B. Included in that et al. Is James Lamsdale, who has been on the podcast. Shout out to Paleo After Dark.
Hey!
And in the blog post, we will put a link to a press release in phys.org from Crystal Castle. Myriapods are the group of arthropods that include millipedes and centipedes. These are pretty distinctive arthropods because they tend to have lots of body segments as opposed to the 3 in insects and the 2 in spiders. Millipedes and centipedes have a head and then a whole bunch of body segments, and each of those body segments has a bunch of legs. So you end up with this long shaped bug.
As True Facts put it, head, body, 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 butt.
Yes. Legs, 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 legs. But like a lot of arthropods and squishy things, we don't have a ton of information about the early evolution of this lineage. We know that they started out aquatic, just like other arthropod insects and arachnids. All these groups started out with aquatic ancestors. We have some early millipede, like myriapods, and we also have a group of close relatives to myriapods called euthycarcinoids, which are very millipede-like, but seem to be aquatic or perhaps amphibious. So maybe a sign of how they got started.
Cool.
This paper describes a new species of millipede-like creature from Wisconsin, from the Waukesha Lagerstätte, which is Silurian, about 437 million years ago, right about the time that land ecosystems are starting to get going. This new species is called Wacartus muscularis. It is preserved. They found 35 total specimens, including a bunch that are gorgeous.
Cool.
This site preserves a lot of, it's fine mudstone, and it preserves a lot of stuff just smooshed between the layers and beautifully laid out. Wacartus is preserved in you're just looking at a millipede. You look at it and you're like, yep, that's one of them. It's smushed into the sediment. It preserves the limbs, various body segments, even the musculature of the body is preserved here, and they were able to study it. These bugs have a long, flexible body. They can tell it's flexible, partly because of the way the body segments overlap each other, but also because a bunch of the specimens are curled. Like the actual specimen is like curled a little bit, the way that you see in centipedes and millipedes.
Cool.
It has 11 body segments beyond the head, each one with one pair of legs per segment. So I have been saying millipede-like, but that arrangement is more centipede-like.
Yes, indeed.
But it is not a true myriapod. It is not within the group. And there's a whole bunch of different features that make it not technically within the myriapods. Apparently, one of them is that 11 is not enough body segments.
Yeah, that is a very short centipede and or millipede.
According to the paper, the agreed upon minimum, like it is one of the defining features, is 17.
Why? Weird.
That's where myriapods start. The earliest, these are myriapods, a ancestral trait of that group is at least 17 body segments, apparently.
That's awesome.
Impress your friends at parties.
Yep. I'm going to be looking at cartoon centipedes and millipedes from here on out to go, nope, not enough.
So the traits that it has place it outside of myriapods, but also outside of the euthycarcinoids, that other group. Gotcha. Their phylogenetic analysis suggests that myriapods and euthycarcinoids are next to each other, and then this new species is just outside of that.
Cool.
So it is one more step removed from true centipedes and millipedes. Also of note, this fossil site is an aquatic site. The depositional environment is shallow marine. This bug is considered to have been aquatic, like all the other creatures that are in the same shallow marine deposit. But it has a handful, but one notable feature that is unexpected for a aquatic arthropod. Its legs are unbranched.
Oh.
Arthropods tend to have either biramous or uniramous appendages. If you ever get the chance to look at the leg of a crab, it's got two parts. There's a lower part that is the leg, and then it has this upper branch that is a breathing structure. But insects and spiders and myriapods, arachnids in general actually, insects, arachnids, and myriapods don't have that upper segment. They just have a leg. There's no second branch to it. this loss of that upper branch is considered to be an important adaptation for moving on to land, because our modern aquatic arthropods have both branches, but our modern terrestrial arthropods don't have them. But Wacartus is uniramus. It only has the one branch. Incidentally, so are the euthycarcinoids, the
Okay.
closer relatives of myriapods. All of this seems to suggest that the loss of that extra leg branch happened before they left the water. That the ancestors of millipedes and centipedes evolved land legs before they actually started living on land.
Neat.
And not only is this an interesting trend to see in just the evolution of this group, we see that same thing in tetrapods.
Yeah.
The earliest limbs in fish, like sturdy, muscular, bony legs capable of moving around, are in aquatic fish species. So it seems that in both of these lineages, a terrestrial capable leg evolved before the animal actually moved out onto land.
Yeah. Which, like, there we discussed this in the when we've talked about tetrapods moving to land, that the ability to move around in very shallow water, or from one pool to the next, or in tidal situations where you might get trapped, is super useful. Like, we see that in tons. There's octopus that do that. There's fish, non-limbed fish today that will flip and flop. There's sharks that do that. Like, that's a useful thing to be able to do. So being able to walk well as an aquatic animal actually has advantages. So it makes sense. Is neat to see the same pattern show up.
Yeah. It also makes sense that, like, yeah, having the legs to move around on land makes sense as a key prerequisite to living on land. It does seem like this might be. Now I'm curious to know, if we look at the earliest insects and the earliest arachnids, is this the typical way that this happens? That you evolve good walking legs, and that's what allows you to go live on land, rather than you experience some sort of pressure to go live on land and had to evolve better walking legs to manage it.
Exactly, that you may not have good walking legs because you came on land. You were only able to go on land because you had powerful legs.
Yes.
Yeah, very cool. This is also a fun note because, like, I don't think most people think about, the other land groups that had to have come from the water. And centipedes and millipedes might be a surprise. The only reason I'm less surprised is because I've seen videos of centipedes, which are very good swimmers. Like, there actually is one called the swimming centipede, and I've seen people that have them as pets, and they will just power on through bodies of water, and they move about as fast as they move on land.
I don't like that.
Yeah, they are surprisingly good swimmers.
Inside of a centipede are actually a bunch of smaller bugs, and one of them's pounding a drum, and the
Yes.
others are all moving the limbs in the same pattern.
Well, I mean, and it's that kind of thing of, like, the snake moving on land is the same motion they're going to use in the water. An undulating motion of limbs is a very common way to move in the water, and that's how centipedes and millipedes move on land.
They're pretty cool. They're pretty cool bugs.
They're one of my favorite groups. They don't come up often, but
Yeah.
I love centipedes specifically. They are so scary and awesome. Well, speaking of creepy crawlies, my next news actually is somewhat addendum potentially to my last episode, burrowing, because this is looking at some of those Ediacaran burrows that might not be burrows.
Okay.
This is research by Bruno Becker-Kerber et al. In Gondwana Research, and the article is by Gayoung Lee in Gizmodo. So, the Ediacaran, the period before the Cambrian,
episode 31,
is the first time we start seeing large-bodied organisms in the fossil record. Some of which seem like they were maybe the earliest animals. Others may have been something else. And it's when we start to see our first evidence of things like burrowing behavior. We have some trace fossils that seem to be little burrows or had been identified as burrows. These date to the late Ediacaran, about 555 to 542 million years old, and are little fossil filaments from Brazil that look like they could be little worm-ish burrows, something worm-shaped.
Yeah, the kind of stuff that becomes much more common in the Cambrian.
Exactly. And that's the reason that these have always been notable. The Cambrian explosion is when we see a bunch of animal fossils start showing up and behaviors like burrowing become more and more common throughout the Cambrian. And the ocean floor gets changed into what kind of ecosystem it is. These burrows were seen as potential evidence of the starting of that trend and also potential solid evidence for early animals.
Mm-hmm.
That animals of some sort were likely the ones making these, specifically meofauna, which are critters under 1 millimeter in length. So these are things that are like moving between the sand grains and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. So it could be that idea that the Cambrian explosion started before the Cambrian explosion started, with these early burrows and critters getting active in the Ediacaran. But it's hard to identify who made them for sure. So this study took a closer look at some of these specimens, some of these trace fossils. They used new material and updated analyses. These were discovered back in 2017, so they're not super old. But, we do have techniques that weren't used in those initial studies, and there had some new specimens from a new locality that date to about 544 to 539 million years old. So similar range to the others, but a little bit different. And what they found with these scans and these analyses is that preserved in these filaments are cells.
Oh.
And they find preserved cells, preserved cell walls and divisions, and the organic remains of those cell walls. So, like the pieces that would have made a cell wall.
Cool.
And they note that none of these are consistent with a burrow like trace fossil,
Mm.
but they are consistent with a microbial growth, either bacteria or algae growth down into the sediment. They noted that there are 3 distinct size classes among the specimens, which likely represent different species, and that everything about the features they found match up with either algae or bacteria growing in the sediment and forming little filament colonies.
Yeah.
The larger populations likely represent something similar to benthic red or green algae, so bottom dwelling algae. And these smaller populations could be algae or cyanobacteria or some other large version of sulfur oxidizing bacteria, which I
Mm.
love that the smaller filaments could be large members of the sulfur bacteria.
Yes.
Some of these are large enough to be visible with the naked eye and would rank among the largest ever recorded for their kind of species, if that is indeed what these are.
Oh, interesting.
So it does suggest some things that, like bioturbation, so that turning up of the sediment by animals, was not very active at this time, so that these kind of communities could be present and active. They were not getting disrupted by burrowers or
Right.
meofaunal groups that would have been digging through. So it does refute the idea that those kinds of groups were getting active in the Ediacaran before the Cambrian explosion.
Yeah, that this might represent not an animal burrow, but a kind of subsurface growth that could only happen when there weren't animals around burrowing through the sediment and messing it all up.
Exactly. So, kind of the exact opposite. This does coincide with some other hypotheses and conclusions from other studies that have held the idea that around 540 million years ago, oxygen was too thin in the atmosphere to support myofaunal groups and
Hmm.
activity. So, this does seem to kind of overturn the previous findings for these trace fossils. Luke Perry, who was one of the author, who's the first author on that 2017 study for these fossils, commented in the article and noted that they're not sold on all of the trace fossils being disputed. especially the younger members, some of which were not investigated in this study. So some of
Okay.
the younger trace fossils they looked at were not addressed here, and they they are not convinced that those are wholly refuted across the board, but that they are happy to see these fossils being reanalyzed with higher resolution methods.
Yeah. This is a really interesting kind of negative results study
Hmm.
where even if this is accurate in basically saying, no, that previous identification was wrong, it's still telling us something interesting and new about those Ediacaran ecosystems.
Yes, it is giving us a more solid view of what might have been happening, and are really cool fossils if they are preserved microbial colonies. Like,
Yeah.
that's very cool. We have preserved cellular structure in these Ediacaran trace fossils. That's awesome.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, speaking of digging holes, my next research is about Neanderthal dental work.
Not the kind of holes I usually want to have dug.
Just you wait. This study is awesome. This is research published in PLOS One by Elisa Zubova et al., and we will link in the blog post to an article by Sarah Kuta on Smithsonian Magazine. Neanderthals, our long lost sister species, episode 177, have been receiving a glow up in recent years in terms of our understanding of their cultural practices, their behavioral things, their knowledge. One of the big open questions about Neanderthals is just how much medical knowledge they actually had. We have some evidence for Neanderthals caring for, sick members of their group, possible use of medicinal plants. We also have evidence for them using toothpicks to like pick food out of their teeth, all of which are interesting, but also all of which are not unique. We see all of that in other modern apes today,
Yes.
and they're not necessarily considered super complex versions of medicinal care, behaviors that show, as opposed to the kinds of things we pride ourselves in, behaviors that show really complex thought and consideration and figuring out how to solve a problem. So the question remains open: exactly how much medical care were Neanderthals able to do? This research suggests more. These authors examine a single Neanderthal tooth recovered from Chagarskaya Cave in southwest Siberia. It's about 59,000 years old. This tooth has a big hole in the center of it. The hole, from like the chewing surface of the tooth, goes all the way down to the bottom of the pulp cavity. So just
Wow.
a big hole concavity within this tooth. It is possible for damage like this to happen. There's all sorts of reasons why a tooth might get damaged like this, but the authors noticed a few interesting factors. Number one, there is wear on the tooth that is the result of chewing activity over this hole, which
Hmm. Hmm.
suggests that this hole formed during the life of this individual. They kept on chewing and using this tooth after it had a hole in it. Number two, there are scrape marks inside the hole, but not elsewhere on the tooth. These scrape marks, they note, match what you might expect from rotational movement of something inside the hole, and the position of the hole matches the position we have seen in other Neanderthal teeth of tooth infections.
Yeah.
All of which does seem to support the conjecture that this is a Neanderthal drilled a cavity,
Yes.
that they had a tooth infection and got it drilled to treat it. In order to test this hypothesis, the authors got a hold of 3 Homo sapiens teeth to try it themselves on. 2 of these teeth were from archaeological sites. I think they were museum specimens that they got permission to do the experiments on. One of the teeth, the third one, is noted as having been contributed by one of the authors. I don't know what that means. I tried to look into the supplemental information and see if there was any more detail, and I didn't see any. So I don't know if that means they all drew straws and then one of them got punched
Tied
in
a
the jaw.
string
It's tied
to
a
their
string. But they got hold of these 3 Homo sapiens teeth and then made pointed stone tools out of jasper, which is similar to what would have been around this cave at their time, and tried their hand at using the stone point to drill into the tooth. What they found was that A, totally possible.
Yeah.
B, this left the same pattern of scrape marks and damage on the tooth that they see in this Neanderthal tooth.
Yeah.
That this is indeed what it looks like when you use a pointed stone tip to drill a hole into a tooth.
So cool.
They also found that it was very difficult.
Yeah.
That it required very complex and precise finger movements, and that it also was hard to do without accidentally damaging the tooth, which suggests that if this is indeed what happened, whoever did it knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Also, from just existing dental knowledge, it's worth noting this procedure would have helped a tooth infection. The reason that this is able to help is because, number one, it relieves pressure on the pulp cavity, but it also scrapes out the infected tissue.
Yes.
So you're removing the infected tissue, which helps prevent the spread of infection. They also noticed that on another, I think this was on the outside side of the tooth, there are some toothpick grooves, which we have seen in other examples of Neanderthal teeth, which they point out could mean multiple attempts at treating this tooth, this problem that they were having. All of this seems to suggest, and there's disagreement. Someone was quoted in the Smithsonian Magazine article pointing out that there could be other explanations for this, but the evidence does seem to suggest pretty well that a Neanderthal got a cavity drilled back 60,000 years ago. This has so many fascinating implications if true. Number one, it suggests that Neanderthals could identify the source of pain and how to relieve that pain.
Yes.
This isn't because, like, if you have a thing stuck in your hand, that's a pretty, okay, this thing's in my hand, it doesn't belong there, I can pull it out and that'll help. This is a much more specific kind of treatment that they understood a treatment plan of a sort to solve a problem. It also suggests that they likely treated each other.
Yep.
Right? This probably wasn't self-administered.
No.
It suggests that whoever did the procedure was very dexterous and probably experienced at doing it. And the part that I find the most impressive, we don't know the extent of their medical knowledge, but we do know how much anesthesia they had. And outside of maybe some nice plants, this would have hurt so much. Like, this would have been a really uncomfortable procedure, which suggests that Neanderthals had the wherewithal to endure short-term painful procedure for the sake of long-term pain relief.
Yeah.
Which is a really complex, this is the marshmallow experiment, right? With the kids, right? It's putting off gratification now for better gratification later. The idea of a Neanderthal, like, just sitting down, opening its mouth, and letting someone else do however long this takes while they tell you about their fishing trip, scraping into the tooth with the understanding that this would make things better in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's wild. That is a wild level of cognitive capability to see in this tooth.
Yes. And it brings up so many questions of, was this a group activity? You know, did you have ones holding the patient down to keep them steady as they were, you know, effectively tortured, you know, as their tooth was drilled out? Is it that scene in Braveheart when it's, you do it, I'll hold him down? What kind, like, how specialty was the tool they, like, is this all this tool was made for? You know, was this a specialized dentistry tool? You know, it's just all of these things that come to mind of, what all was going on with this. It's very cool. And once again, the more we learn about them, just the more relatable they are.
Yeah. This is also the other fun thing that is a neat implication is if this is in fact direct evidence of some kind of dental care, it predates most the previous record holder, which was a case of a Homo sapiens from Italy 14,000 years ago. So this is 45,000 years older than our previous record holder for the oldest evidence of dental care.
Well, and I can see how you can make the connection to getting at that tooth infection if it just like through happenstance of one of your buddies has a toothache and then that tooth gets knocked out or rots out, and
Yeah.
then afterward they feel way better, and okay, so getting rid of the tooth, and like I wouldn't be surprised if the earliest forms of it were the castaway of, all right, I
That's
got
what I was
stick,
thinking.
I got rock, get rid of that problem tooth. And then eventually one of them went, you know what, I've been fiddling with some stone shards and some bone carving, let me try something.
Take a well, and also I am not a dentist. I don't know anything about dentistry, but you can see where there's a cavity.
Yeah.
So it might have started out as simple as, well, instead of taking the whole tooth out, why don't we just take out the part that looks gross?
Yep.
There's a part of the tooth that looks wrong. Can we just take that part out? But of course, then it's a tooth, and all right, well, what do we have that can damage a tooth? And then it refines from there. I agree with you that I think it's pretty easy to know when one of your teeth is the cause of your pain because you use it all the time. And also, you're a human. You just stick your finger in your mouth and poke each of your teeth until you find which one's the problem.
Yeah. And you're just there holding your cheek back and going,
yes. This one. And then, right, I think that it is a relatively quick logical leap to go, just take that tooth out. That tooth is the problem, to then going, all right, it's something about the tooth, something on the tooth or in the tooth, and maybe we can take that away.
Yeah.
They did mention I think this was in the paper, that there is no clear evidence of any sort of filler.
Yes, exactly.
But that there certainly could have been. Right? That's the next step, is to go, hey, my food keeps getting stuck in my tooth hole. Yep. Can we jam something in there to stop that problem from happening? Dentistry is really just a series of simple steps until you finally get to where we are now.
Yeah. Well, and like a wooden plug or something, because like we used to make wooden, like wood used to be used as part of it. So like something like that you would have to replace from time to time, but it keeps stuff from getting in there.
Yeah. Someone else's tooth.
Yes.
Like, hey, my kid just lost a tooth. I know exactly where to put it.
And when it's so cool to think of Neanderthals doing medical trial and error. That's so cool. Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
With that, that's the news. Go check out the links in the blog post if you want to read more about those newses. Also, hop on the Discord. I'm sure there's going to be lots of discussion about some of these newses over there. And now it is time for our feature presentation. We're going to take a short musical break, and when we get back, we're going to start talking about sea turtles. We'll start by explaining what makes sea turtles different from all other turtles. So here's a fun statement. Sea turtles are the last surviving Mesozoic marine reptiles.
Yeah, which is
how about that?
Awesome way to look at them, and really puts it in perspective.
They've been around a long time, and they are what's left of this legacy. We'll get to that. First, let's talk about sea turtles. We have talked about turtles before on the podcast, episode 60 for the big overview of turtles. In that episode, we talked about the fact that there are lots of aquatic turtles. In fact, most turtles are at least partially aquatic. They tend to live in freshwater, in ponds and rivers and stuff like that. Some species can handle brackish water of lagoons or coastal waters, but they are, for the most part, continental species. They're
Hmm.
aquatic, but they're sticking around the continents. Aquatic turtles often have webbed feet. They often have flatter shells. Some of them even have soft shells. Pig snouted turtles even have flippers, but they are not sea turtles.
Mm-mm.
Sea turtles are ocean dwelling turtles. They live along coastlines and, in many cases, for at least part of their life, out in the open ocean, out in the sea. Sea turtles are living alongside whales and big sharks and other pelagic open ocean organisms. Sea turtles are also distinct in their physical features to help with this lifestyle. We'll get into some of the specific diversity in a bit, but just generally speaking, sea turtles tend to be large. They
Hmm.
are larger than most other turtles. They include the largest living turtles. They have a streamlined shell, right? The back part of the shell is often sort of teardrop shaped,
Yeah.
right? Very
Right.
hydrodynamic. The streamlined shell allows them to swim more efficiently. The big body, part of that is like we've talked about with other marine animals. You can be bigger in the water because you don't have to fight gravity as much. Also, being large helps your body to resist some of the aspects of the ocean, like the cold or the salinity of the
Hmm.
seawater. Sea turtles also have special salt glands to help them get rid of excess salt, like we see in a lot of other ocean dwelling animals. Sea turtle carapace, the back part of the shell, has that nice streamlined shape. The belly part, the plastron of sea turtles, tends to be reduced. They
Hmm.
tend to have it tends to be smaller and shorter. Sea turtles cannot retract their heads into their shells. In fact, I don't believe they can retract any part of their body into any part of their shell. The
Yeah.
limbs,
No.
the tail, they are just out for these turtles permanently.
Hmm.
And sea turtles have flippers, full on flippers. The front limbs of sea turtles are very similar to the front limbs of whales and other marine tetrapods. They have a very large humerus, the upper arm bone, and then the hands are long with these long finger bones that are also stiffened into this paddle shape. So they're very stiff, they're very large, and they're quite the arm itself is quite flexible. Has a lot of movement to it, a lot of
Yeah.
range of motion because those front flippers are how turtles swim.
Yes.
This makes them kind of unique among ocean dwelling vertebrates
Hmm.
in the world today. Basically, all the rest of them swim with their tails, but sea turtles swim with their front arms.
Yeah. Like the only other one I can think of is like sea lions
Yes, that's true.
and penguins
Oh, yeah, penguins. Okay. All right. There's a couple others.
that use that underwater flying.
Yes.
And yeah, and it's very these are wings that like they are so heavily modified. They're crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, like a sea turtle's wingspan tends to be about as long as the turtle is.
Yeah.
They're sort of that they fit in a square. They have these
Yeah.
very long wide arms. And they kind of have to use their arms for swimming because not only do they have tiny little tails, but they have a shell, which
Yeah.
means they can't achieve the flexibility, right? Whales and dolphins bend their bodies up and down. Lots of other animals bend their bodies side to side. A turtle's body does not bend. A
Yeah.
turtle, the turtle, as remembering from episode 60, a turtle shell is its rib cage that has expanded to cover the body. It is a rigid structure of many, many, many fused bones. It does not flex by the nature of its construction. It is meant to be sturdy.
Which makes them that weird condition because we talked about in the secondarily aquatic that like reptiles already move in the pattern that is good for swimming. Lizards
Yes.
move in a side to side serpentine motion, and that's great for swimming. Turtles are the reptiles that got rid of that ability. They can't move that
Mhm.
way anymore. So they had to swim a different
Yes.
way.
Of course, turtles also have back legs. They don't tend to use their back legs for swimming as much. They're flippers, but they're smaller. They don't really
Yeah.
move as much. They're rudders. They're using those to help with like stabilization and such.
And they come and play in other stuff that's really cool.
And speaking of ways that sea turtles have locked themselves in to a particular counterintuitive lifestyle, maybe the most famous thing about sea turtles is that though they spend their entire lives in the ocean, they have to return to land to lay their eggs.
Yeah.
This is true for all turtles. You know, all
Mhm.
there are no live bearing turtles. All turtles lay eggs, and they all have to lay eggs on land. So even aquatic, even dedicated lake and river dwellers, they have to lay their eggs in nests on land. So do crocodilians. This is a feature that they are kind of locked into. For whatever reason, sea turtles have never evolved live birth, like we see with a lot of other marine reptiles that have developed live birth. That might be just the same reason that dinosaurs and crocodilians tend not to evolve live birth. It might be that there's no room in your inflexible box body to have a
Mhm.
developing baby in there.
Yep.
Whatever the combo of reasons is, sea turtles must return to land to lay their eggs, which is another thing that they are almost unique
Yeah.
in the modern world.
Yeah, because like you get lots of other ocean going out, like penguins that come back
Mhm.
and nest, but those are not marine animals. Like a penguin is not locked to the ocean. They've got perfectly
Yes.
functioning back legs. They can hop. They can run. They can move around,
Yes.
yeah, awkwardly, but quite efficiently on land.
Yeah. See, I think one of the maybe the reason sea turtles are so famous for this is because they are so blatantly not built for moving on land.
Yeah.
They are a perfect example of the evolutionary contradiction between where you ended up and where you came from.
Yes. Yep.
It is so you look at a sea turtle scooting itself onto the beach and it just looks like a terrible idea.
Yeah.
This
It.
you're terrible at it. Like they're really
Hmm.
again, you really only have your front flippers to
Hmm.
scoot yourself along. It's not even like you have four-wheel drive. You only got the two for the most part. You're extremely slow, you're extremely vulnerable. You have to be up there all night just to get the job done. It's really a rough deal for sea turtles.
Yeah. Like you watch them pull, and it looks exhausting.
Yeah.
And it seems like it shouldn't work. Like, it seems
Yeah.
like this should be a non-viable plan.
Well, I think sea turtles are the reason why this idea has persisted for other ancient marine reptiles. You'll
Mhm.
still hear the suggestions of like plesiosaurs. Maybe plesiosaurs came up onto land, and the intuitive response is to go, absolutely not. That would be ridiculous. There's no
Yes.
way a plesiosaur would be remotely comfortable coming onto land. But we've got sea turtles.
Yep.
And the combination of evolutionary pressures has led to this being the lifestyle. They are
Well, and
kind of stuck with it.
that was a thought I had at the very beginning of this discussion was sea turtles, are way up on the list of animals that if they weren't so well known today, I think they would be one of our examples of like, and then there's this weirdo that's
Yeah.
just utterly bizarre. Like a sea turtle's super weird for a turtle. Like everything other than having a shell, every other thing that's turtly doesn't really fit for them, and they're super weird, but they're just charismatic, so we're used to them existing. So we're
Yeah.
not pointing at them as being as utterly strange as they are.
They're like elephants.
Yes, exactly.
Now, this does, of course, bring up other things they do with their flippers, right? Their flippers are used for swimming. They also use them to scoot around on the land when they have to get up on the land. They use them to dig out their nests.
Yeah.
And I believe they use all four flippers in some cases, don't they? Do they use
Yeah.
the back flippers?
They'll use so the back flippers are the main digging tool.
Okay.
They can scoop those like when you watch them dig, it looks like two hands in webbed gloves,
Yeah.
and they just scoop the nest out and dig it out that way, and then they'll use all four to throw sand back over the nest when they
That's
bury it.
right. Yeah. And then some turtles have been observed using their flippers to handle food,
Yeah.
to like paw at their food, which we'll get to here in a little bit. We'll talk about sea turtle diets.
I saw some video of a sea turtle. I don't remember what it bit at, but it bit at something it did not like, and then it smacked it with its flipper afterward.
Sometimes I take a bite of the food and that's what I want to do. Just get this out of
Like,
here.
I don't remember if it was something that stung it or but it didn't like it, and it shook it out of its mouth and then slapped it with its flipper. Another
How
effective use.
dare you? So, broadly speaking, sea turtles are a very unusual group of an already very unusual group of reptiles.
Yep.
Modern sea turtles, the living species of sea turtles, are one lineage. They are all closer to each other than they are to anybody else. They belong to a group called Chelonoidea. Genetic studies have suggested that their closest relatives are things like snapping turtles and mud and musk turtles, which are also largely aquatic turtles. Snapping turtles even have that reduced belly part of the shell like we see in sea
Yeah.
turtles. So you can see some of that family resemblance.
Absolutely. Cool group of turtles. Like,
Those are
that's a
all awesome turtles.
yeah, that's a good list of turtles.
In our modern world, this big group of sea turtles, Chelonoidea, includes 7 species in 2 families. You've got your Cheloniidae, which are the hard-backed sea turtles, and the Dermocheliidae, the leather-backed sea turtles. And because there's so few of them, we get to walk through them. We're going to go through all of them and explore some of this diversity along the way, starting with the hardback sea turtles Cheloniidae, which include 6 of the 7 modern species of sea turtles. The sort of poster child for Cheloniidae, and the one from which they get their name, is Chelonia mitis, green sea turtles.
Yeah.
These are if you're picturing a sea turtle, it's a green sea turtle. This is the image of a sea turtle.
Which is kind of ironic because they are a standout member.
And they are they are. They're a standout member. They are extremely widespread. They are distributed basically all around the world, mostly in the tropics. We're going to see that as a trend here. Sea turtles typically are found in the tropics, but green sea turtles are all over the world. They make a whole bunch of different habitats into their nests. They don't have as specific requirements as a lot of other turtles. They are also among the largest of the hard-backed sea turtles.
Mm-hmm.
Green sea turtles are often coming in at 3 or 4 feet long, 80 to 120 centimeters, which for a turtle is gigantic.
Yeah.
And even for any animal, like 3 or 4 feet long is pretty darn big among reptiles. There's not a lot of reptiles that are bigger than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they can be very weighty. They could be 300 kilograms, 600 plus pounds. They get quite large. Their size and their distribution is part of what makes them so famous. They're easy to observe, they're charismatic, they're fun to see. I'm pretty sure Crush from Finding Nemo is a green sea turtle, right?
Yes,
I think that's what he's supposed to be.
Yep.
Hanging out with his kid, which is a bizarre thing to show a sea turtle doing.
What are the odds?
Famously, what a dad, right? This guy. He was like, my father abandoned me, and I swore I'd never let it happen.
I will break this generational trauma.
Beyond green sea turtles, there is also a new addition to the list, flatback turtles, Natator depressus, which up until 1988 were considered part of green sea turtles. Some 30, 40 years ago, they got separated out as their own genus and species. These are a bit smaller, 3 feet long, 100 kilograms, 300 pounds. They have a bit of a flatter shell, hence the name, flatback turtles, and they are much more restricted. Yeah. Flatback sea turtles are only found along northern Australia and then up into like the Indonesian Philippines area, but that's it. Their nesting site is only Australian north coast.
Yeah.
They are a much more limited group of turtles. They are also very poorly known, which partially that's because they only live in one restricted area, and that explains why they weren't separated out until more recently. And there's another factor. I pulled this quote from the website I was reading because I knew you'd appreciate it. It said, over much of their nesting range, these turtles are predated upon by saltwater crocodiles, which have also been known to attack human beings. Because of this, there are virtually no underwater photos of adults taken in the wild.
Yeah,
They
that'd
come with
do
their
it.
own paparazzi bodyguards.
Yep. Like, you're in the Northern Territory. That is the wrong place to go swimming.
That's where the crocs are. So, yeah, partially they're poorly known because they live alongside literal human eating predators.
Well, and you had to live on the one set of beaches that are croc filled. Like,
Yes.
most other places, your crocodilian would stay well in the rivers. You had to choose the one where the crocs are like, nah, reefs are great.
We also have a couple other turtles named specifically for the way that their faces look. Hawksbill sea turtles, Eretmachilles imbricata, which are named for their very prominent pointy beaks.
Yeah.
All turtles have beaks. Hawksbills have like a beak. They've really gone all out with it.
Yeah, they've got like a narrower face, and it's this much more like angular to it, while a bunch of the others are big, broad, fat heads, and theirs is very sporty looking.
Yes. It is related to their diet, which we'll get to in a little bit. Hawksbills are pretty average sized. They are also around the world, mostly in the tropics, whereas our next species, Caretta, maybe the other uber famous of our sea turtles, loggerheads.
Yeah.
Loggerheads are named for their big heads. They've got these big round heads. They're also quite large. They're pretty. They're similar to green sea turtles. I think the records for hardback turtles are green sea turtles, but loggerheads are in the same weight class as green sea turtles. Loggerheads are also known for their migrations. This is most sea turtles will migrate at various parts of their lives. Loggerheads are particularly famous for traveling across oceans in their migratory habits over their lifestyle. They tend to nest in the tropics, but then they'll migrate to temperate areas to feed. For example, some populations feed off the coast of Mexico and nest in Japan.
Wow.
So their migration is across the Pacific Ocean.
Wow, that I didn't even know it was that far. That's insane.
Yeah, they go thousands of miles in their migration.
I mean, I get it. Mexican food, like, that's worth the trip.
That's the play. And then Japan has great healthcare, I guess. It's a great place to raise
schools.
Kids. Great schools.
As long as your baby turtle is not born with pink hair, they'll have a perfectly normal school experience.
And then we have two remaining species of hardback sea turtles, the Ridley sea turtles.
Yeah.
Olive Ridley and Kemp's Ridley, Lepidochelys olivacea and Lepidochelys kempii. These are both small. These are among the smallest of our living sea turtles. They're typically like 2 feet long, which again, big for turtles.
Yeah, like that's bigger than your average pond turtle by far.
Yeah, that is in like the top 10 non-tortoise turtles in the world, but small for sea turtles.
They're so cute. They're so tiny and cute.
They're so tiny. Kemp's has the record for the smallest species of sea turtles. They only grow to like 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Which again, big, but it's a tiny little sea turtle.
They're adorable.
Olive Ridleys are worldwide, while Kemp's Ridleys are, again, another restricted one, only found around the Gulf of Mexico. In the Caribbean, on the coastlines around the Gulf of Mexico. So this is another case where they're only living in one particular region. And the Ridley sea turtles are famous for a particular nesting habit. They exhibit synchronous nesting. These events, which are called arribadas, where thousands of them all nest in the same place in the same span of a few days.
Yeah.
So you get these just huge congregations of these sea turtles coming up onto land, making their nests.
This always stands out really distinctly to me because this was one of the first times I ever, like, when I first learned about this was Zaboomafoo way back in the day,
Hmm.
and they had a whole episode dedicated to it, and it's one of like my clearest memories of like early animal programming and everything. Just I was blown away by this. It's the this nesting strategy of sea turtles has always been a core memory for me with animal
Yeah,
facts.
it's very cool. Interestingly, Kemp's Ridley sea turtles, as far as I've read, only nest this way.
Yeah,
They
gotcha.
always nest in these big groups, whereas olives only do it in some regions.
Okay, interesting.
So there's like I think it's like 3 or 4 specific places where they do these big aribatas nesting colonies, and in other places they nest like other sea turtles.
Huh. That's very interesting.
So, even though all of these are turtles that are living out in the ocean, there's a bunch of diversity in
Mhm.
sizes and habits and where they live. There's also a lot of dietary diversity, which again, I'm leaving till later for reasons. But we've got, among just these 6 hardback species, we've got a lot of diversity. And then we've got the other family of sea turtles. Now, as we have expressed so far, turtles are already super weird among reptiles. Sea turtles are super weird among turtles. Leatherback sea turtles are the weird sea turtles.
They're aliens. They're so bizarre.
They are so strange. This is the family Dermochelidae. There is one living species, leatherback turtles, Dermocheles coriacea. Their name comes from the fact that, unlike most other turtles and all those other sea turtles, their carapace, the back part of their shell, is not made of big plates of bone like we see. That's why they're all called hardback sea turtles, hardback like
Mhm.
most turtles. Leatherback sea turtle's carapace is a mosaic of hundreds of interlocking plates
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
makes their shell flexible. It can this is exactly the thing we were talking about before that turtles don't do is have
Yes.
flexible bodies. Leatherback sea turtles have a somewhat flexible shell. That is why they
Yeah.
have that name, leatherback. Part of the function of this shell seems to be to withstand intense water pressure
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
leatherback sea turtles are also the deepest divers among living sea turtles. They've been known to swim down more than 1,000 meters while foraging for food.
Ridiculous.
They're preposterous. They also have lost the keratin scutes on the
Mhm.
shell, which also adds to their sort of softer feeling. I've never actually gotten to touch a leatherback sea turtle. I don't know if you have,
No, I haven't.
but I would imagine they feel different.
Yeah, it's one of those where like unless you're a wildlife rescue person, it is extremely illegal to touch them, and I don't believe
Yes.
they've ever been in human care.
Okay. Well, yeah, and for the benefit of the listeners, the only reason I asked Will if he's gotten to pet one is because you worked at an aquarium,
Yes,
and that seems
exactly.
like a
Yep.
place where if anyone was going to get to pet a leatherback, it would have been at an aquarium. Leatherbacks, besides their physical body being slightly different, they're also adapted for conditions that no other sea turtles can handle.
Yeah.
They are very cold adapted, which helps for the deep ocean, but also they range from the tropics up to the Arctic.
Yeah.
These are a very rare example of a cold climate adapted turtle.
Yes.
Very unusual.
It's not something you'd expect to be popping up on your Arctic cruise is a giant
Yeah.
turtle.
They manage to do this because they have a whole bunch of tricks for maintaining a high body temperature, including they have fatty insulation
Mhm.
in their body, like mammals do, which is very unusual. They maintain a high metabolism compared to a lot
Mhm.
of other reptiles. They've got a bunch of circulatory adaptations, like the way that the blood vessels cross past each other to keep the warmth distributed throughout the body. And the most famous of the adaptations of leatherback sea turtles is that they are enormous.
So big.
The smaller end of the range for adult leatherbacks is about the size of the largest hardback sea turtles. Like smaller leatherbacks are like a meter and a half long. right? 4 to 5 feet. They can be more than 2 meters. They can be
Yep.
6+ feet long. These are longer. That's longer than me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These are huge, and they can weigh like half a ton.
Yeah. No, they are massive. And they've got these huge flippers as well that have
Yeah.
like they have a wider wingspan than any of the other turtles proportionately. So like no, not only cuz they're big but also cuz they're long. So they're just whenever I see a picture of one next to people, it's always bigger than I'm expecting it to be.
Yeah. Yeah, most sea turtles kind of look like you'd expect an ocean living turtle to look,
Yeah.
right? It's a turtle, it's got the flippers. Leatherbacks are specifically, they are open ocean turtles. Those
Yeah.
they've got those giant flippers that help them dive down deep, that help them swim around in the open ocean. They arguably the most ocean adapted of our
Yes.
modern sea turtle. They also, and this is another another fun fact that you'll appreciate, have among the largest ontogenetic size change.
Oh yeah.
Because hatchling leatherbacks are about the same size as hatchling any other sea turtle. They
Yep.
hatch at like 2 inches long, and they weigh, according to what I read, an ounce and a half. So
So much growing to do.
they cover 3 orders of magnitude. The paper that I read this on noted that this is a change in size from baby to adult, matched only by large crocodilians.
Yep. Yep.
This is a thing reptiles do. They can go from being fit in your hand to the largest reptiles on the planet.
And that makes sense because those are the only those are the only reptiles that are going to outsize this reptile. Like if it
Yes.
weren't for large crocodilians, this would be our biggest reptile by weight, which is
Yes.
that's really notable. Like that's
Yeah.
really important to remember.
And I don't know because I didn't think to look it up, but I do wonder if the average size of
Mhm.
a leatherback sea turtle adult is greater than the average size of big crocodilians.
Yeah, I if I remember the like sizing chart, the leatherback comes in like after the top 4 or 5 species.
That makes sense.
So like yeah, salties, Niles, and Indian gharials. I think the
Mm,
Orinoco might be up there. Those regularly outsize them because yeah, their upper size is a ton. Like
yeah.
the salties are reaching a ton when they break their records, but the other crocodilians are not regularly reaching leatherback size. Like
Yeah.
the vast majority, all your caimans for the most part, other than like black caimans and stuff, like most other crocodilians are not getting up to this size. It's just the big members.
Yeah. And speaking of that size change, let's talk just a bit about the life cycle of sea turtles because it is
Yay.
really distinctive for these reptiles. All sea turtles are born at the beach.
Hmm.
That is where baby sea turtles happen. Adults make their way to a shoreline, typically a specific shoreline. They
Hmm.
go back to the beach that they themselves were born at. They have this generational nesting habit. They're typically born in or near the place that their parents were born.
Yes.
Like I said before, they migrate to these nesting grounds because where they nest is different from where they eat for most of their lives. Some travel hundreds, others thousands of kilometers, and they navigate famously using Earth's magnetic fields.
Hmm.
There has been research done on this to confirm that, yeah, they can. I think there was one study that tracked the changing of the magnetic field in a certain part of a shoreline, like because the
Hmm.
magnetic field of the Earth adjusts over time, and they tracked how the magnetic field shifted along this shoreline, and the sea turtles also shifted in that same
Yeah.
pattern with
They
where they
moved
were nesting.
along the beach as
Yes.
the magnetic fields moved. That's so cool. Well, the GPS says it's right here,
Yes,
and
yes. This is a turtle just driving into the lake.
it's just I'm going where the computer told me to.
It's funny because sea turtles, I was thinking about this before and I didn't get a chance to bring it up. sea turtles wouldn't have arguments about
No.
where they were driving because only one of them has to do this.
Yes.
This is we talked about. I was saying before, like, oh yeah, sea turtles need to be able to get up on land. Female sea turtles need to be able to get up on land. It is like female animals of many different species often get the accolades of like being the one that's putting in the really hard work. Sea turtles, that's so like male sea turtles just kind of get to chill. They have to make the original trip, right? Hatchlings are born on the beach, and then they do have to make that famous mad dash to get to the ocean.
Yep.
Once they're there, males are off the hook. It's like, all right, ocean till I die.
Like, as far as I'm aware, they're equally as capable of moving on a beach, like when they do sea turtle releases, because very often sea turtles get cold stunned and get washed up on the beach in kind of a coma because of sharp dips in temperature that stunned them. And when they release, they're just released at the beach and they pull themselves back in the water. Yeah, to my knowledge, they're both equally capable. Males just never have to come back.
Baby sea turtles make their way into the sea, and then they live in the open ocean. Baby sea turtles tend to be pelagic, which means they are living out in the open sea, typically high up in the water column. Baby sea turtles, they tend to hang around like floating rafts of algae. They are pretty much universally eating soft-bodied invertebrates. They eat jellies, they eat little plankton, they'll eat larvae, like crustacean larvae. I think some will also take fish larvae. They are eating soft foods in the water column out in the open ocean. And then when they become adults, they move back towards the coasts and change their diet.
Yeah. It's very cool because I know for a long time it was kind of a mystery what happened with the babies. Like they left the beach and then we knew a whole bunch about the adults because they came back to the shore. So it's very cool that we now know that there's this shift.
Yeah. And this is why I left diet till later, because the babies all have the same diet, and then each species has its own shift into what the adults eat. Loggerhead sea turtles are mostly durophagous, eating hard-shelled food. They eat lots of crabs, they'll eat clams and such, which that is one of the functions of that big giant head for crushing hard-shelled food.
Yeah, they just bite through a crab.
Yup. Ridley turtles also eat a lot of crustaceans. Kemp's Ridleys mostly eat crabs, whereas olive Ridleys are more of a generalist. They'll eat a variety of things. Hawksbills, with those pointy beaks, are sponge specialists.
Which who eats sponges?
No one. I think they're the only vertebrate that does this. There might be some weird fish out there, but like no one is specialized in eating sponges. That is a wild thing to do.
Maybe for a reason, Hawksbill, it's a sponge. What? Why?
I believe I've read that they will also take like coral, like other stuff on the seafloor, but they are mainly eating sponges, and sponges are made of glass.
Yep.
What are you doing?
I ate a bowl of sponges with no milk.
And then speaking of unusual diets, green sea turtles are herbivores.
Yeah. Like pretty exclusively.
Yeah, they'll eat other stuff, but most of their diet is seagrasses and algae.
Yeah.
Which they are the only herbivorous sea turtles.
Yeah. It's why it's so funny that they're the most famous, because they're weird.
Yeah, they're doing something unusual.
Also, here's the spot to give the fun fact of why they're called green sea turtles. They aren't green. They're brown.
That's true. They're very brown.
Their fat is green because of their herbivorous diet.
This is like that meme about salmon.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
We named a color after you.
You named a color after me. What color is it?
Is it silvery blue like my scales? No, it's pink. Why is it pink?
Why? Why?
Why is it pink?
Yep.
And then we've got a couple other unusual ones. Flatback sea turtles are unusual in that they make a similar shift. Like the babies eat floating plankton and then the adults eat benthic, right, seafloor food. But the babies also live near the shore.
Oh, gotcha.
This is a case where the babies aren't out in the open ocean. They live out in the they live near the shore. The adults switch. The babies eat soft floating food and the adults eat soft seafloor food. They're eating like
Oh.
sea anemones and soft corals and things like that.
Oh, well, maybe Crush is a flatback sea turtle, and that's how he met up with his son, because they were hanging out in the same area.
Oh, but Finding Nemo came out in like 2003
Yes.
or something. And they were, I guess they didn't read that paper.
Well, and that's why we called it a green sea turtle, because we didn't know. We didn't realize.
That's true. All right. Hey,
misidentified flatback.
They are down by Australia.
And they're in Australia, yeah.
They're in Australia. No, that is true.
Common ascent can and take.
Somewhere out there is a sea turtle researcher going, this is what I've been saying.
Yes, yep. I mean, it all lines up.
It does kind of all line up. And then, once again, leatherbacks are the odd ones out. Leatherback sea turtle babies start out the same way as all other sea turtle babies, for the most part, out in the open ocean, eating floating soft foods. And then as adults, they remain out in the open ocean and continue to eat floating soft foods.
Yeah.
They don't change. Leatherback sea turtles are the famous ones that are out there eating jellies.
They've got specialists.
Those, if somehow you have made it this far in our podcast and you've never seen a picture of a leatherback sea turtle's mouth, go look it up. It's incredible.
It's so well. Like, not only do they have those throat spikes to hold the jellyfish in, but their esophagus is super long to hold a magazine of jellyfish as they collect them.
Yeah. They are, leatherbacks, again, distinguishing themselves in this regard. This is also why leatherbacks are in such danger from pollution. This is a very famous case where leatherback sea turtles will grab plastic bags that are floating in the ocean because they're hunting jellyfish. And that's what that looks like.
And that'll affect the others, because the other, like, most sea turtles are not picky eaters. Like,
yes, this is true.
Green sea turtles will take a fish. They would steal fish from the sharks at the aquarium all the time, because what's a sand tiger shark going to do to a green sea turtle?
Yeah,
they can't really stop her, so she would just muscle her way in, and they would just have to stop feeding the sharks until she left. So the others will also eat jellies, and it's one of the more common injuries is they'll eat a plastic bag, it catches an air pocket in their intestines, and they float crooked.
Yeah.
And so we have to surgically remove the bag and then put weights on their shell to even them back out until their internal buoyancy regulates.
Yeah. Man, surgery on a turtle sounds like it's a real
hard
proposition.
Yeah, like it sounds like you have to you need to experience in shop class if you're gonna
you need a saw. That does bring up another really fun note about sea turtles, is that they do, once they're fully grown, they get to be one of those animals like tortoises on land that get to just kind of do whatever they want.
Yep.
Like if you're a green sea turtle, if you're a 4-foot long sea turtle, because you've got that shell, you've still got that turtle shell, you're pretty safe.
Yeah.
From anything that might come to bother you. Even leatherbacks, even though they have that more flexible and softer shell, you're still a 6-foot long turtle.
Yep.
Which is why the babies are again, they stand out so much. This image of little baby turtles fleeing down the beach while, and this is something, again, if you've never seen one of these documentaries, the march of baby sea turtles out of their nest and down to the beach is a smorgasbord for predators.
Yep.
Birds and crabs and other predators will come to the beach the same way that like grizzlies will follow the salmon as they're spawning. predators will hang out at the beach where the sea turtles nest, because pretty soon hundreds of these little snacks are going to be very ineptly crawling over the sand toward the ocean.
Yep, I've seen octopus pull little sea turtles down into
Oof.
burrows. I've seen like raccoons and stuff, crocs coming into the beach. Like, and then in the water, there's
Mhm.
a whole bunch of predators also waiting. So, like,
Yep.
it's even if you're an animal that's not particularly well suited to eat a turtle, okay, but there's a bajillion of them and it's protein. So you'll see
Yep.
seagulls just full swallowing baby turtles.
And a baby turtle, like, once again, it is the lot that nature has given to sea turtles. It is the least fair competition that there could
Yep.
possibly be, because they're not good at it.
Mm-mm.
Like, I'm not good at walking on land, on sand, and I have feet,
Yes. Yep.
right? It's rough. Fortunately, adult sea turtle, and again, adults aren't guarding their nest,
Mm-mm.
right? That
Nope.
they're not, much like a lot of turtles. There's no nest guarding. There's no parental care. They lay the eggs, and then they have to get back in the ocean before something notices that they're out stranded on land. But adult sea turtles tend to lay, they'll often lay multiple nests. I think some species will nest like each month over a certain period of
Yeah.
time. Like they're laying lots of nests, and each nest has dozens of eggs.
Yes.
So a single adult sea turtle doing its best is going to have hundreds of little baby sea turtles.
Yeah. Well, and during those synchronized nesting events, it's one of the classic go-to examples of overwhelming the predators with
Hmm.
prey. There are literally too many baby sea turtles and actually not enough predators to wipe them out.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, you're going to
it's
have
just not physically possible. Yeah.
millions of these baby sea turtles. And every year someone's on the edge. There's some turtle on the edge of the edge of the beach like, "Oh, man."
Yep. Oh, it's so cool watching them go. Well, and it also is that a good reminder of how often animals in nature works off of the rule of large numbers. That like
Mhm.
a baby sea turtle is so vulnerable. Even once it finally gets into the water, they're not like agile. Like
No.
they're not super powerful swimmers. They're not super fast.
It's like watching a new butterfly.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is an incredibly vulnerable animal, and yet, if odds go their way, they will become one of the largest reptiles on the planet.
Yeah.
And it's because, yeah, we only need like 5 of you to make it to breeding age, and then
Yep.
we're doing good on our statistics.
Well, and it's worth considering that the trip to the water is just the first part,
Mhm.
because where they live is out in the open ocean.
Yep. They got a lot of swimming to go.
Yeah, there's a lot of swimming, and it's full of sharks and
Yep.
dolphins and all sorts of other hungry animals.
That also reminded me of another thing that stands out about sea turtles to me is you said the fact that they can kind of just do what they want because they're a giant turtle and who's going to mess with them,
Hmm.
which is why tiger sharks are often so notable because
Yes.
tiger sharks are sea turtle specialists. They have chainsaw teeth for biting through sea turtle shells and an incredibly powerful, very short, robust face for giving them a strong bite. And they are
Yeah.
famously one of the only predators that can take on an adult sea turtle and dismember it and eat it. Like there are other animals that will eat sea turtles, like a great white absolutely could if it wants to.
Sure.
But a tiger shark, that is one of the things they're famous for. And that's the fact that there's really only one notable sea turtle specialist that's famous for it. That
Yes.
speaks to how awesome sea turtles are.
Absolutely. Sea turtle, they're fascinating. They're such cool animals, really unique among our modern species. If you've got anything else to say about modern sea turtles, now's the
Nothing.
time, because we are about to take a little break, and then we're going to head into the fossil record and go on a tour of the geologic history of sea turtles. Turtles in time, if you will.
I've never played that game, but I've heard it's a classic.
Is that true?
That's Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Is it true that you've never played it?
I've never played it. Yeah.
Oh, man, we should find an arcade machine somewhere.
Yeah, I would be so up for that.
I've never played it all the way through. We had, like,
Yep.
when I was at summer camp counselor, we had arcade machines there, and we would get to play every now and then,
What?
and Turtles in Time was one of them. Well, we weren't
That's
supposed to play, but, sometimes you get, like, a break. It was for the kids, but, sometimes the kids, they need a fourth person, and you have to
yeah.
play, so you gotta join them. We had that, and we had The Simpsons, so I've played a whole bunch of those, too.
Excellent.
Anyway, stay tuned, and we'll talk about sea turtles in time. Will, I'm going to start by doing a thing that Allie likes to do. Keeping in mind that modern sea turtles are one transition from land into water, how many times do you think ocean turtles have evolved independently? Fully out in the ocean, sea turtles.
I know of at least two. I know our modern ones. I know of one famous other one. And this is one of those where I feel like it could just be that, but that there also might be a bunch of like little ones. I'm gonna go with my two. I'm being
Okay.
conservative.
The fossil record seems to indicate at least 6 different times
Wow.
that turtles have taken to the sea.
Even if I would have only gone up to like 4. That's
Yeah,
wow.
it's a bunch.
Turtles are good at this.
Our sea turtle journey begins arguably in the Triassic period.
Oh.
Odontocheles, which is 220 million years old, is one of the oldest known members of the turtle lineage. It does not look a lot like a turtle. It's got a belly shell, but it doesn't have the full wraparound shell like we see with turtles today. It's got teeth. It's an unusual creature, but they're found in shallow marine depositional environments.
I
They've
forgot
got
about
big,
that.
long arms, so they seem to be at least somewhat of a sea turtle.
Cool. I assume they developed the belly shell first so that they could surf.
That was for surfing across the waves,
Mm-hmm.
for catching some air.
Yep.
So, if Odontocheles is considered a proper sea turtle, then there have been sea turtles for about as long as there have been turtles.
Crazy.
But our recognizable sea turtles first show up in the Jurassic period. There is a lineage called Thalassochylidia, which literally means sea turtles. This is a basal branch of the turtle family tree. So it's not related closely to any particular living groups of turtles. It's an early branch of their ancestors, but they are turtle. They've got the shell, they've got a lot of the turtle features. They are part of an early branch called Angola Chelonia, which will come up later in a little bit. Thalassochylidia are known from mainly from the late Jurassic, mostly from Europe,
Okay.
and they are all found in coastal or open ocean deposits. So we're looking at reef type places or shales, depositional environments with open ocean animals. These early sea turtles are also pretty diverse. There has been a lot of discussion over the years about who's related to who and how do all of the different groups go together in terms of their relationships. But Thalassochylidia is generally described as containing 3 different families, each with several species. So this
Cool.
was a pretty diverse group of mostly European Jurassic marine turtles. Generally, they have long hand bones that appear to have been shaped in that flipper way. At least one specimen of Thalassemes from Germany was preserved with soft tissues that
Whoa.
show what appears to be a stiffened paddle flipper, very
Whoa.
much like our modern sea turtles. Some of these Jurassic marine turtles have fenestra in the skull, these openings in the skull that match the position of modern sea turtle salt glands.
Cool.
So they seem to have also developed salt glands for dealing with excess salt. And isotope studies on the bones of these turtles have matched them to, for some, brackish environments like lagoon and coastal, and others to open ocean.
Wow.
All the evidence points that we had recognizably marine turtles more than 145, 150 million years ago. These were living alongside ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs. They were not turtles as we know them. They were an early branch of the big turtle family tree, all the way back in the Jurassic period.
That's pretty awesome. It's also notable that they're, at least, as far as we've currently found their fossils, kind of isolated to one region, that they're not global.
Yeah. I saw some discussion about that because I think there's maybe one specimen from Argentina,
Yeah.
which is not very close to Europe. So it's possible that they were widespread, but we just
Yes.
haven't found them in other places. It doesn't seem like we have a very good fossil record of
All right. All
them,
right. Cool,
generally
cool.
speaking. Most sea turtles are not known from very complete records.
Yeah.
I might be wrong. There's a lot of turtles to talk about, so I'm sure I overlooked a number of specific specimens. But especially if they were in the open ocean, they
Yes.
could disperse quite widely. So it's very likely that these were more widespread than we've so far identified.
Yeah. Well, and that was my first thought, is that it is a weird idea that they would only
Mhm.
be around one area, because why? Why would you limit
Yeah.
yourself to one region when you can travel the open seas?
Yeah. After the Jurassic period, we move into the early Cretaceous, and this is when the concept of sea turtle starts to take off.
Mhm.
There is a explosion of sea turtle diversity in the Cretaceous. Showing up in the early Cretaceous, we have a group called Sandowneidae, which are several species also known from shallow ocean environments. This group is generally considered probably the sister group to those Jurassic turtles.
Cool.
So those two together might be one group that moved out into the ocean. There's not a ton of research on these turtles as compared to certain later turtles, but they are found in marine environments. There has been some research on their jaw structure that has suggested possible adaptations to durophagy, eating hard shelled
Yep.
foods. And I saw one paper that suggested that the jaw anatomy of these Sandowniid turtles suggests they were suction feeding,
Oh,
which is also
interesting.
a very ocean adaptation.
Yeah, that's cool. And yeah, that's something, like, we do have turtles today that do that, but that's not really
Hmm.
a technique used by sea turtles. So cool combo.
Yeah. Also showing up in the early Cretaceous, we have our first sea turtles among modern familiar groups of turtles. A lineage called Bothromydidae, which is a family of side-necked turtles.
That's what I thought.
These are so among our modern turtles, we've got cryptodiers, which is most turtles that you think of. They pull the head straight back into the shell, and pleurodires, the side-necked turtles, whose neck kind of folds up sideways
Yeah.
as they move it back into the shell. Most modern side-necked turtles are freshwater. In fact, they're all freshwater, rivers, lakes, and stuff. Some can handle brackish environments or coastal environments, but they tend to stick to the continents.
That you pointing out that they're all, freshwater, also made me realize that they're all aquatic turtles, like side
Yeah,
necks.
I don't know that there's a lot of scooting around
Yeah.
on land side neck turtles.
And now the picture of a terrestrial side neck turtle that's got its neck out like a Galapagos tortoise is both really neat and horrifying.
Just like a rattlesnake sticking out of a shell.
Yeah, exactly. Just this winding neck looking around. Like, I want to see one, but no, thank you.
Well, Bothromidids are not nearly as preposterous. They are ocean side neck turtles. The early members of this lineage, there's a whole bunch of different species in this group. Early members are found in freshwater environments. And
Cool.
then later members of this lineage are in marine settings, which is exactly how you would expect it to go.
Yes.
These are also very widespread. They are known from North and South America, Africa, Europe, and India, which
Wow.
suggests that they were able to disperse across the ocean, at least the Atlantic,
Mm-hmm.
right? They were
Mm-hmm.
hopping around the Atlantic Ocean, which again is one of the benefits of being an open ocean creature. Bothromidids, from what I can tell from my reading, not a lot of body evidence to tell us much about their marine habits, but there
Yeah.
is a bunch of research on skulls, and the skulls suggest sea turtle habits.
Cool.
Jaws are pretty diverse, suggesting a variety of diets, some seemingly hard shell specialists, Durophagus, which is like most of our living sea turtles. This is a thing that sea turtles are really good at.
Yep. Well, and it makes sense that Cretaceous is when we would see a lot of these because things were getting good at having hard shells and hunting hard shells.
Yes.
So makes sense.
Studies of Bothromyidid skull anatomy has also suggested that they couldn't retract their heads.
Mm-hmm.
Like modern sea turtles, they lost that neck retraction into the shell, and also possible suction feeding adaptations.
Cool.
And they have those foramina in the skull where the salt glands go. They are quite marine adapted.
I love how consistently that is a thing to look for in marine reptiles of do you have a pocket for a salt gland? Because that's a pretty definitive giveaway that you were swimming in salty water.
At least one Bothromyidid marine turtle, a genus Azabaremes, there was a study from, I think this was a few years ago, that looked at the inner ear of the skull of this turtle and found that the semicircular canals are particularly short and wide, which is a shape we see in leatherbacks.
Yeah.
This seems to be an adaptation for living out in the open ocean and diving.
Cool.
So it seems likely that we had at least some deep diving marine turtles in the early Cretaceous.
Awesome.
And then as we get toward the middle Cretaceous, this starts out early Cretaceous, but then certainly by the middle, we see two more lineages of marine turtles show up. One are the Chelonioidea, the modern lineage of sea turtles. This is the group that is often referred to as the true sea turtles. These are sea turtles sensu now, like we know them. There are a whole bunch of different species of these early chelonioids starting around 100 million years ago. In the past, these were thought to be their own family, their own like group. The Toxocheles and its relatives were grouped in Toxocheliidae, but these days, these are now considered to just be the early members of Chelonioidea. They're not a separate group, they're just the first ones that then gave rise to the turtles we would recognize today. Even in these early members, we start to see some really nice like full shells and things of these turtles. They've got that hydrodynamic shell shape. They've got flippers, although it has been noted that in the early members, the upper arm bone isn't quite as large as our modern sea turtles, and the fingers are not quite as stiff, not quite as rigid. So early steps towards the full flipper that we see today.
Which is the transition you would expect, and that's very neat to have the evidence of.
As, once again, there is evidence that they, early on, lost the ability to retract their necks, and probably were living open ocean. The fact that all of our modern chelonioids are open ocean at least some part of their life, except for that one, suggests that that was probably a very early on feature in the group, which helped them to disperse far and wide. In the late Cretaceous, at the end of the Cretaceous, we have a handful of fossils that have been argued to potentially be the earliest known members of our two modern families. The first hard-backed cheloniids and the first leather-backed dermocheliids, or at least something close. So our modern sea turtle lineage gets started in the Cretaceous and then maybe is our modern families before the end of the Cretaceous. So when I said that sea turtles are the last surviving Mesozoic marine reptiles, this particular lineage is the last surviving of the Mesozoic marine reptiles.
Yes. Oh.
And then there is the other lineage of Cretaceous marine turtles, the most diverse and the most famous of the Cretaceous marine turtles, Protostegidae.
Yep.
Which are maybe closely related to the modern lineage. Some research has suggested that they're a sister group to the colonioids. Others have suggested that they're more distantly related. It's turtles. No, we don't know how to organize fossil turtles by their relationships.
We don't know where they fit on the tree of life.
Yes.
How can we expect to know where they fit next to each other?
Whew. But they are very clearly marine turtles. They got flippers. They've got streamlined shells. They've got reduced shells, right? Smaller and shorter. They've got salt glands. They've got all the sea turtle attributes. They get started in the early Cretaceous. The earliest member, I believe, is a species of Desmaticheles from about 120 million years ago. And then there's Santanicheles from about 108 million years ago. One of those, I think this is one of the early ones, actually has eggs inside of it.
Whoa.
There's a specimen
awesome.
from Colombia that had at least 48 eggs inside of its body, and the eggs were the shell structure, the paper noted, was similar to modern freshwater and terrestrial turtles.
Okay.
So once again, an early attribute before maybe they would have taken on a shell type more like modern sea turtles.
I wouldn't have even thought to be able to distinguish habitat based off of shell makeup. That's very cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's like you can tell for sure
Yeah,
based on
but
the shells, but these shells look like what we would expect from freshwater and terrestrial turtles, even though they were marine turtles, right?
Yes.
Those shells hadn't taken on that sea turtle shape that we know today. These early protostegids are pretty small. Both of those species that I just mentioned are under a meter long, so they're 1 or 2 feet long, tiny for sea turtles. Later members of this group got bigger. A bunch of the later members were similar in sizes to modern sea turtles, right? 3, 4, 5 feet long. And then this group also includes the largest turtles of all time, the giant protostegids. The most famous of these is Archelon.
Yep.
Archelon is a sea turtle. If you've ever seen a big sea turtle skeleton on display in a museum, it was Archelon. Yep. That's who we put up on display in the museum. Archelon comes from the late Cretaceous of North America from the Western Interior Seaway. Episode 71, it was swimming around with mosasaurs and stuff here in the central part of North America. Archelon is enormous. The shell alone is over 2 meters long. Like you could fit inside of its shell. Will, who is not a not a short person, could fit inside of Archelon's shell.
I could make a fairly comfortable bed out of Archelon's shell.
You could a soup that would feed a family. It also has a somewhat long tail. I guess kind of like a snapping turtle with that sort of a slightly longer tail. With the tail and the head and neck and everything, Archelon is estimated to have reached total body lengths of around 4.5 meters long, which is like 16 feet long.
Yep.
Huge. They are absolutely enormous. The wingspan of the flippers is also about 4.5 meters wide.
Yep, it's that box we were talking about.
This is the box. This is a turtle the size of a small airplane.
Yep. Yeah, this is a very funny way to drive home how big it is. But I've been doing bricks with Vask for over a year now, and I've made a whole bunch of Lego minifigure scale paleo animals. And the Archelon one is one of the biggest ones of the minifig scaled animals because it's a big animal. It's huge.
They're super, super big. And not the only ones. Giant size in protostegid sea turtles is known from several different genera. Yeah. There's Protostega, which is also from North America. There's Leviathanacheles from Europe. And there's Buliacheles and Cratocheles, both from Australia. A bunch of these are only known from fragments. Archelon, we have like beautiful, nice big shells and stuff. A lot of these are only known from fragments, but the fragments are big.
Yeah.
Right? This fragment is the size that it would be in Archelon. So you had this whole diversity of giant 10, 12, 15-foot marine turtles, probably weighing, these probably outweighed our modern crocodilians for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
These were
Yes.
huge.
A turtle's a dense animal, and when you're getting up like 16-ish feet is already in the upper size range, like length of our modern crocodile. There's not many
Yes.
species that get above that, and they are not nearly as wide as a
And crocs are
turtle.
pretty narrow compared to a
Yep.
turtle.
Like a big croc can get like a big salty can be like 3 times the width I am. That's like they can get fat. They are not a box. They are
No.
still quite slim.
Archelon is also famous for its beak.
Yeah.
Archelon has we talked about the hawksbill beak as like that's a real beak. Archelon's got a beak. Like it
Yeah.
is. I saw one paper describe it because the lower jaw is relatively short and then the upper jaw is long and hooked. And this paper described it as having a tremendous overbite.
Yeah. Yep.
And it does. It's got this huge, really mean looking beak.
It kind of looks like the Looney Tunes vulture with just that big,
Yes.
that big upper hook. No.
Once again, not the only one. Even some early protostegids had hooked beaks. So this was
Mhm.
a somewhat common feature among the group. Exactly what and this has been a trend throughout these marine turtles. It's really hard to say for sure what a marine turtle was eating because A, they don't have teeth, which is often what we
Mhm.
would use to figure this out. But also, as you pointed out, modern sea turtles are pretty generalized eaters. And in
Yeah.
fact, turtles in general are pretty opportunistic.
They're not super picky animals. Like if they can get it in their mouth, it's good nutrients.
Yeah. It has been suggested once again that protostegids might have been durophagus specialists eating hard-shelled food. The hooked beak partially supports this, right? Hawksbills have their hooked beak and it helps them eat glass. But also, some protostegids seem to have a reinforced jaw, just an
Mhm.
extra robust, extra strengthened jaw. This combined with those big flippers, right? They've got big, wide flippers that would have made them very powerful swimmers, has led to the common depiction that they were eating hard shelled food on the go while swimming
Yeah.
around, which the most common way this is depicted is them as ammonite specialists.
Yep.
Ammonites, these spiral-shelled cephalopods, very, very common in the Mesozoic. That is typically what you'll hear. It's like, what was Archelon eating? Ammonites is often what comes up. The image of them eating kind of like a leatherback sea turtle, but instead of sucking up jellies, crunching the shells of ammonites.
Which is a lovely opposite side of the coin of how to be a giant sea turtle.
Yes. And actually, this is not the last place that they are very similar to leatherbacks. In addition to their size and their possible, hunting on the out in the open ocean, giant protostegids seem to be, again, swimming out in the open, pelagic, hunting planktonic prey. They also, in some cases, we have evidence that they lost the scutes on their carapace
Yeah.
that they had, if not quite a leatherback, because I don't think that their shell bone structure is the same as leatherbacks today, but they did lose some of that hardness on the outside of the shell, which suggests maybe some flexibility like we see in leatherbacks.
Yeah, like yeah, that this was skin covered instead of hard scoot covered. So like
Yeah.
at least like a soft shell turtle where you've got skin coating, which is I'm very curious of why. What is it about being such a large turtle? Is this coincidence or is there
Yeah.
something beneficial to being skin covered?
And it might have to do with this next point. There has been some research that has done histology, so looking at the structure of the bone tissue in Archelon and Protostega, which seems to suggest very rapid growth, that they grew up very quickly.
Oh.
Now, earlier protostegids and also modern, like hardback turtles today, and the early members of the colonioid lineage all show a more sort of expected growth trajectory. But leatherbacks also have very rapid growth from baby to adult.
That makes a
And
lot of
that
sense.
might be, well, because, you got to get big, right? So
Yes.
why dawdle?
Like you said, 2 orders of magnitude.
Yes, you gotta get big. Well, and again, one has to assume that baby Archelon were a couple inches long. So
Yeah,
like you
exactly.
had to
Like
get real big.
at most, like if you're a big baby turtle, you're like a few inches long instead of just a couple.
Yes.
You're still real tiny.
But it maybe some of that flexibility helps with growing more quickly. It's also very likely that much like leatherbacks are out in the ocean alongside whales and sharks and stuff, these giant protostegids, this was late Cretaceous, which
Mhm.
meant not only were there sharks and big fish and plesiosaurs, there were mosasaurs.
Yeah.
Archelon lived in the western interior seaway, which is famous for mosasaurs. They might have been 16-foot long turtles because they lived alongside 40-foot long predatory lizards.
Yep. Well, and this is one of the notable things about Mesozoic sea turtles is, and especially Cretaceous ones, we were talking about how today sea turtles can kind of just do as they please once they're fully grown. Because
Mm-hmm.
other than a couple of very large species of sharks, most people can't mess with you in the ocean. Like you're just untouchable. Not the case in the Cretaceous.
No.
Very much on the menu, and there were mosasaurs that were specialized for eating tough food, so like a turtle would be well on the menu for many of them.
Yeah. Protostegids, like mosasaurs, don't make it past the Cretaceous.
Hmm.
They are gone. It's possible they were already in decline. Some research has pointed out that ammonites seem to have been in decline toward the end
Yeah.
of the Cretaceous. And if these turtles were in fact ammonite specialists, at least some of them, their extinction might have been related to the decline in ammonites. At the end of the Cretaceous, we do lose these protostegids. I didn't mention their reproductive habits because we have basically no information about that, but there is no reason to think they were doing anything particularly different from our modern sea turtles. So
Yeah.
imagine, if you will, a 12 or 14-foot long Archelon dragging itself up onto the beach to make a nest.
It's one of those fun examples because we talk about how when it comes to those behaviors with fossil groups, there's things that we could reasonably expect, but we also they were doing something weird and maybe they were, but every turtle alive today nests basically the same way. Like this is an
Mm-hmm.
extremely conserved they dig a hole or find someone else's hole. Like turtles will nest in alligator nests and stuff, but they bury eggs. Those eggs hatch whenever it's time for them to hatch, and then the babies go wherever the babies are supposed to go. So
Yep.
the idea that one of them was doing something odd would make them incredibly stand out as a turtle, let alone a sea turtle. So yeah, probably.
And they're, in all other respects, they're shaped like sea turtles.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no difference that would make us think they were doing something unusual.
Yeah. So now the question that comes up is, were they doing mass synchronized nestings? Were they also returning to their home beach, or were they like, yeah, any beach will do? Like
Yeah.
those details are what would be cool if we could ever learn about that.
Yep. Also, who showed up when the babies hatched?
Right?
Just a bunch of
Like,
little dinosaurs and pterosaurs
yes.
hanging around waiting for the baby turtles to come out.
Oh, can you just totally picture pterosaurs like stabbing their beaks down into the sand looking for nests?
100%. That there must have been pterosaurs who showed up, who because we'll see this in some modern birds, their migratory path
Yes.
has stopovers at
Hmm.
like spawning grounds and stuff that they rely on. There had to have been pterosaurs who were like, yeah, on our yearly migration, we stop at this beach at this time because it's when the Archelon are hatching. And there's a million, and these baby turtles are huge. They're like 3 inches. Just a full mouthful of baby turtle.
Listen, 3 or 4 of these, you're gonna be full. It's great.
So, the Cretaceous period was the heyday of sea turtles. We had at least 4 different major lineages of marine turtles in the Cretaceous, 3 of which survive the end Cretaceous mass extinction.
Yeah.
Protostegids go extinct. The giant sea turtles, that lineage is gone. But the Sandouniids, that basal lineage, and the Bothromidids, the side-necked lineage, both make it into the Paleogene. They are both
Wow.
known from the Paleocene and or Eocene. I think at least one of them goes to the Eocene. And the Colonioids, our modern lineage of sea turtles, diversifies after the end Cretaceous extinction, probably in part because there aren't protostegid sea turtles around anymore.
Yeah, it helps.
There's a lot of space without any Archelon. In the Paleocene and Eocene, we see the earliest definitive members of the Coloniids and the Dermocheliids.
Cool.
Leatherback sea turtles are comparatively rare in the fossil record, which makes sense because A, they have less sturdy shells, and also they lived in the open ocean, which is not as good a place for preserving, whereas hardback sea turtles are quite common in the fossil record. The early Cenozoic alone has several different species of them that have been reported.
Well, and it's this. I just now had this comparison in mind of talking about like a bunch of these sea turtles we don't always have great fossil records of because if they were open ocean, even though they do have to come back to beaches to nest, it's kind of like flowers, where that's a very
Yeah.
brief moment. That yes, we probably will get some fossils, but only if things sync up. But if you're a bunch of turtles hanging out around shallow waters, that's the way to get fossilized. If that's where you live, so that's a cool distinction.
And Archelon lived in a shallow seaway, lived in the
Yes,
western
exactly.
interior, which is why we get those nice Archelon fossils.
Cool.
So, hardback and leatherback sea turtles, as we know them, show up in the early Cenozoic, Paleocene, Eocene, and very early on, both lineages split in two. The hardback sea turtles seem to have an old world and a new world radiation.
Okay.
A bunch of species on one side of the Atlantic and a bunch of species pop up on the other side. And Dermocheliids, the leatherback sea turtles, split into Dermocheliini, which includes our modern leatherbacks, and Uelocini, the ridgeless leatherbacks.
Oh.
Modern leatherback sea turtles, very notably, have these raised ridges along the back, which are these bony ridges, right? That's part of the shell. This other lineage of leatherback sea turtles didn't have those.
Smooth in all directions.
I guess they were just smooth. They were just
Weird.
smooth leatherbacks.
I mean that's getting to just looking like a soft shell river turtle.
Yeah.
But out in the ocean, now I'm picturing one of them on the beach and just moving super fast like soft shells do.
Yes. Did they have little piggy snouts like soft shell turtles?
Oh please. Oh please.
And in the early Cenozoic, by the late Eocene, whereas those other Cretaceous lineages disappear around this time, our colonioids, modern lineage of sea turtles, continue, and they are joined by a new group of marine turtles. In the Eocene, a group called Stereogeniini, which are also side-necked turtles.
I have heard of these. I forgot about them.
These are pluridyers. They are within the family Podocnemidae, which today is species that are all or mostly live in rivers of South America. In the late Eocene, this branch of ocean-dwelling members are known from the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, the Indian Ocean, tropics all around the world. They are all from marine ecosystems, some coastal, others fully open ocean, alongside whales and other sea turtles. There's about a dozen different species of them. This was a pretty diverse group, a second diverse group of marine side-neck turtles.
Wow. And it's very often, when you have the history of some type of animal, once you get to the one that makes it to today, that's very often the last one to show, either the last one to remain and then it's just them till you get to modern times. A new one showing up after our modern group has already started to diversify is a surprise. That's a shocking,
Yeah.
last minute contender.
These stereogeninians have, again, stop me if you've heard this one, a short plastron, a large humerus. At least one of them has evidence of salt glands. I keep pointing at my forehead. I don't actually know where the salt glands are in a turtle skull, but that's where they are in my brain. I keep pointing at my forehead for them.
I do think they're around the orbit somewhere, but I don't remember
That's why I'm
where.
pointing up here, because I don't have a
Yeah.
snout. So I'm
Yeah.
pointing, yeah. And a 2006 study found there is a site in Venezuela from the late Miocene that has fossil evidence of one of the members of this group, Bairdemes. And a 2006 study found nearby turtle eggs in a
Oh.
nest in ancient sediment that suggests coastal or brackish waters, which is maybe it's the only one I came across in my research of beach nesting in ancient marine turtles,
That's
which
really cool.
once again, not the least bit surprising, but there's some fossils of it. Very, very
Yeah,
cool.
that's very neat. Well, and it's a fun way to find supporting evidence for them being sea turtles is their eggs seem to be on a sandy shoreline beach, and that's very cool.
So, at the beginning of the Cenozoic, we have three different lineages of marine turtles. We lose two of them and gain a new one. So, by the middle Cenozoic, we have two, these side neck turtles and our two families of our modern lineage. In the Neogene, we see once again, for really the last major time, some changes.
Mhm,
In the mid to the late Miocene, those stereogenian side neck turtles diminish, and by the Pliocene, they disappear.
mhm,
The Miocene is also where we see the last known members of the ridgeless leatherbacks
mhm.
and the old world radiation of hardback sea turtles disappear around this time, while the new world radiation gives rise to our modern groups.
Yep, 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 yep.
So by the Pliocene or so, right, 5 or so million years ago, we have achieved modern sea turtle format.
Yeah,
We have lost those old groups. We've lost the other lineages of our modern families. And a final fun little note, the olive and Kemp's Ridley sea turtles, that the two species we have today, are thought to have diverged in the Pliocene when North and South America connected and
Oh.
separated the Atlantic and Pacific populations of their ancestors.
Oh, that's so neat.
So, by 3 or 5 million years ago or so, we have a modern looking array of sea turtles, down from a total of at least 6 different lineages, a max of 4 different coexisting marine turtle lineages. We lost a bunch of the old ones. We trimmed the side branches of our modern groups. We have 7 species living today as the last currently members of this legacy that goes back at over 150 million years.
That's so fun. I'm really fascinated by the old world, new world hard-shelled sea turtles, and then
Yeah.
the new world being the ones to take over.
If I remember correctly, this was a relatively recent study that suggested this.
Yeah.
So it's possible that this is still something that's kind of in flux, our understanding of
Yes.
it. But that was at least some recent research suggests that early split.
Very cool. It's fun because like it has the typical thing. Well, like horses being here in North America.
Hmm.
Like, how long have horses been in North America? Well, the ones you're thinking of, not very long.
Yes, a few hundred years or 50 million years, depending on
Yeah.
what question you're asking.
And it's got that same thing here where it's like, we got sea turtle fossils today. Of these sea turtles, no, because there was a
Nope.
different group that lived here before this group moved over here. And it makes, if that split is legitimate, if that does seem to be what happened with them, it makes me wonder if there was like some distinct, like, did they have different flavors? Like, was it very clear
Yeah.
when you saw one to be like, oh, that's definitely a new world turtle versus an old world? because just look at the face. It looks like it. Because we see that with a lot of like northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere and like
Yeah.
distinctions on the planet today, to where it's just like if you show me a snake, I can go, that's not a North American snake. It
Mhm.
just does not look like any of our snakes. That's definitely something East Asian or something.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sea turtles are a surprisingly common we sometimes we get to the end of an episode like this and it's like, and today there's 7 species remaining, and the feeling of that, well, like rhinos, and
Hmm.
today this is all that's left, and the feeling is like, and we're gonna not have rhinos
Yes.
before too long. And our sea turtles, I mean, most modern sea turtles are endangered, many of them
Yep.
critically endangered, and they are low in their species numbers, but a lot of them are quite diverse and surprisingly successful. But also, who knows what other turtle is cooking up a marine transition that
Yep.
this feels like, even if we did lose all of our modern species of sea turtles, the future will have sea turtles. This is
Yes.
a thing that turtles are just real good at doing, which again is such a bizarre truth given how odd the turtle body plan is.
Yeah. And it it seems surprising that they're so good at it, but now that I'm thinking about it, they do have some go-to features that already line up with being marine. We talked about in the secondary marine episode that like two of the
Hmm.
things that often happens is flipper-like limbs, which a lot of pond turtles are already well on their way to having. Like they've got these very flat, wide hands and webbed fingers, and more fusiform torpedo-shaped bodies, which a
Yeah.
shell is already that. So like it actually does make sense. Like they're already very good at moving through the water.
Hmm.
They just are having to do it in a different way than everyone else. But other than the arm flying, they that yeah, they're
Yeah.
surprisingly well pre-shaped for the ocean.
If this diversity, if these, because some of these might be, it might turn out that the early basal ones are actually 2 different lineages. It might turn
Yep.
out that the Cretaceous protostegids are within the same lineage as our modern sea turtles, but it's looking like at least 6 separate times, which I believe means turtles have done this more than both snakes and crocs,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is wild because snakes and crocs are a way better shape for swimming in the ocean. Snakes are just eel shaped. That's a shape
Yep.
that already works.
It feels like turtles have done it so many times because turtles carry that very notable energy of who's going to stop me.
Yeah, a turtle kind of just does what it wants. They've got that skunk attitude. Skunks
Yeah,
are
well,
always my
and
go-to of an animal where it's like, you,
yes.
this is an unconcerned animal because it knows it has
Yep.
nothing to worry. It's the oh, what was the, ooh, this is a reference. Hang on. Oh, what's the, this is, I think this was a movie where someone talks about in the Roman Empire, a Roman citizen could walk from one side of the continent to the other without being disturbed. That
Oh,
was
right.
the power of the Roman Empire.
Yes, yes.
I
I
don't
don't
remember
remember
what
what
this is
that's.
from.
No, I do remember that line though.
It's probably some superhero movie, right? Because that's why
Probably.
we both know it. Turtles have that, right? Where it's like,
Yes.
yes, I will walk undisturbed wherever I want to go because I am a turtle.
Well, and thinking about it, they do maybe have one advantage to crocs and snakes in that snakes are very eel shaped, which means they are going to be competing with things like eels. And though crocs are not like particularly, dolphin shaped, but they are like very mosasaur shaped
Hmm.
and very similar sized predators to toothed whales like dolphins. So
Yeah,
they'd likely be competing with them.
but there's
Not a
nothing
lot
like
out there shaped
turtles.
like a turtle.
No.
So, like, other than
Mm.
other turtles who have already done it, like other marine turtles, becoming a marine turtle, you don't have a lot that's shaped like you potentially. So
Yeah.
maybe I wonder how much of an advantage that has been that you're living a lifestyle that doesn't really match many
Yeah.
other, if any other, marine animals particularly.
Fascinating. Listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey through turtle history. We did not get to stop and talk a whole lot about any specific examples. I'm sure there's a bunch of cool things out there that I had to gloss over because it turns out there's a lot of sea turtles in the
Yeah.
history of our planet. Also, I Googled it, and that quote is from the West Wing.
There. Yep. Yep.
That's when I think if I remember right, it's when he's mad because some other country shot down a
Yeah.
plane that had his doctor friend in it, and now he's debating, a proportional. I think the episode is called A Proportional Response, and he's
Yes.
debating what to do about it, and the part of him that wants to just go to war and be like, we should be like the Roman Empire. That's why he brings it up.
Yes. Yep. I do remember that. Yep. Good show.
Anyway, before we wrap up the episode, there is one last thing to do, and that is answer some questions from our patrons. This podcast, of course, is supported by the lovely financial and moral support we get from our supporters on Patreon. And one of the bonuses gifts that you can get as a patron is the ability to submit questions for us to answer here on the podcast. We got a couple different questions that are pretty short and fun ones for today. Will, what do we got?
Our first question is from Hailstrom, who asks, which episode surprised you most during your research? Like where you learned something that blew your mind?
Oh, that's a fun question. It's interesting because most episodes of this podcast fall into broadly two categories. One is topics I already knew a whole bunch about,
Yes.
like sea turtles. And then two is topics that I knew basically nothing about. And the first one that comes to mind for that, I'm thinking back to The Boring Billion, episode
Yep.
164, where that was, I didn't even know if that was going to make a whole episode before I started putting notes together. But I think the ones that stand out for me are the ones where I thought I knew a bunch and then learned some surprising new information. The top example in my mind is Sicilians, episode 162, where I learned many shocking, surprising, and disturbing facts about Sicilians.
Yeah. Those two types of episode distinctions is I definitely agree with because it's often I'm learning everything I'm about to know about this topic while taking notes, or I had to look up some specifics. And I'm trying to think. I'm also running into the issue of it's so hard to remember which episode as like I was surprised about because now I've known that like a bunch of the older ones I've known that information now for a while. So
Yes.
I can't remember. I do remember while doing Nocturnality that like the different ways that insects have evolved to see color at night
Yeah.
and the reasons you stop seeing color at night, like why you actually lose that. Because that was something that I didn't actually know what the physics were. That was really cool. that was I got really deep into that. Our other question is from Rebecca, who says, in episode 121, David mentioned something about a dinosaur being born with two heads, giving an example of how that's the only way a dinosaur would have two brains. Is there fossil evidence of deformed dinosaurs?
That is an excellent question. There are, to my knowledge, no fossils of two-headed dinosaurs, but there are a bunch of deformations of dinosaurs and other animal fossils. It is often difficult to tell the difference between a deformity that is congenital, meaning the animal was born with it, versus traumatic, meaning something happened along the way. Among dinosaurs, there's tons of these. There's a bunch of dinosaurs that have like asymmetry in their skeleton. Very famously, ceratopsians. The frills often are asymmetrical. There's examples of fused vertebrae. There are dinosaur footprints that are missing a toe or there's one recent example of the toe is like turned the other direction from what it's supposed to be. Which of these they were born with and which of these were the result of an injury of some kind is often very difficult to tell. There are at the Gray Fossil site, every now and then we would find a fossil. I remember one example of a tapir that was missing a tooth in the jaw, but it wasn't that the tooth had fallen out. It didn't have the tooth socket.
Yeah. Yep.
That it had just not grown that tooth. That it had one less tooth than a standard tapir. That is pretty. We see a lot of stuff with teeth. I actually I did a little Google and I found a paper, Witzman 2021, which is a review of fossil deformities and a discussion about if they are, which ones might be congenital, which ones might be traumatic. And they've got just tables of examples, and a ton of them are teeth things. Missing teeth, extra teeth. They had a list of a couple of dicynodonts with double tusks.
Yeah.
So you do get what appear to be quote unquote birth defects, right? Congenital abnormalities. Usually they're pretty minor, right? They're pretty small things, with one very famous exception. And that is a specimen of an early reptile called Hyphalosaurus. This is a member of a group called Charistideres. This one's from the Cretaceous of China. It is an embryo of this animal with 2 necks and 2 heads.
Yeah, that's so cool.
It is, I think, to my knowledge, it is the only example of a polycephalic, right, multi-headed fossil organism.
Yeah.
Which is very, very cool, and also drives home why we don't see a lot of these. This was an embryo because 2-headed animals almost never survive beyond, if they survive hatching at all.
Yes.
This one did not. This was an embryo that was fossilized. So the short answer is yes. We have lots of deformed dinosaurs. No, we have no 2-headed dinosaurs. But yes, we do have one 2-headed fossil.
Yeah. Well, and it's a situation where the statistics just aren't in our favor to get many of the extreme abnormalities, because these are very rare, among any animals you look at, even ones where it happens more often, like snakes and turtles, which are the 2 most common examples I can think of, where if you look up example of 2-headed animal, one of those will probably be the first one you find. A lot of those are being captively bred.
Yep.
So those are not wild examples. They are breeding examples where they're being bred and maintained in numbers that you would not typically find or be able to observe in the wild.
Yes. That number is usually 1.
Yes. Yep. And so like those are happening in a situation where we're more likely to be able to catch when they happen. And then when they do happen, they get a lot of attention. Like there's a bunch of news. It's kind of like white tigers are not super common, but the ones that we have are going to be in a zoo.
Every one of them makes a headline.
Yes, exactly. And then we can breed those to get more. Same with leucistic alligators and stuff like that. So it's not like it was for sure happening in the fossil record with probably every group of animals you can think of. But the likeliness that one egg that happens to have a 2-headed embryo in it, or a conjoined embryo, or whatever the situation is it's just you're really fighting the numbers that's going to be the one that fossilizes.
So I guess it would be more accurate to amend my answer. Yes, there were 2-headed dinosaurs. Almost certainly some dinosaur embryo at some point had 2 heads, but we haven't found any fossils of them, and we almost certainly never will. That is an extremely that is a 1 in a bajillion chance to get that fossilized.
And like you said, they're not going to typically survive into any later adults phase. In humans, and like the snake examples, they survive because there's caretaking, like medical, and like with the snake, you have to actively feed them in a different way so that the heads don't attack each other.
Yes,
which would not happen in the wild. So that's not going to be in place for these animals. They're not going to have the chance.
Thank you, Rebecca and Hailstrom, for your questions and for your wonderful support of us over on Patreon. Dear listeners, if you would like to support us on Patreon and further our goals of making lots of fun scientific educational content, follow the link in the description, and we would love to have you there. There's all sorts of cool bonus goodies over there. Also in the episode description, you can find a link to our website where you can check out the blog post for this episode, where we will have links to more information. We'll also have a bunch of pictures of cool sea turtles. It'll be a lot of fun. If you liked this, there are some related episodes. As we mentioned earlier, episode 60 was our turtles episode. Episode 231, which Will has mentioned a couple times, secondarily aquatic vertebrates. We also did sea snakes and marine crocs back in the day, episodes 169 and 168, respectively. So you can go check them out.
The second episode of Bricks with Basque, I go into a whole bunch about Archelon because that's the one we built for it.
Yeah. Also, that Lego Archelon looks awesome.
It's one of my favorites.
Go check it out. It's super cool. Also, the Deep Sea, episode 128. We do a lot of ocean stuff. Also, the Western Interior Seaway, episode 71. Go check it out.
Yep.
If I list all the ocean episodes, we're gonna be here forever.
There's a playlist on YouTube for it.
That's true. There is. It's all. I think there's also a category on the blog.
Yes.
Ocean life.
Yep. Yeah, we spend a lot of time in the water.
Thank you again to all of our requesters for this episode, to all of our new patrons, old patrons, patrons yet to be, and of course, an extra special thanks to our top tier patrons, Danielle Loves Bugs, Jeff Ellington, and Sarah May. Don't forget, this episode comes out right before Croc Month, so stay tuned for the Croc festivities.
Yes.
Now, I believe that there are some murmurings among certain corners of our listenership of that May is some sort of turtle month, and we can assure you here at Common Descent that this is pure propaganda spread by nefarious individuals following their own personal agenda.
I have received no official memo or notification of a third month.
Any rumors to the contrary are pure falsehoods and should be ignored.
It's propaganda.
So happy almost Croc Month. We
and
release
nothing
episodes.
Else.
we release episodes every fortnight. Stay tuned. Next episode's one of those 5s. So Allie's going to come join us and we're going to talk about plants. And then after that, we'll probably talk about crocs and stuff. And then after that, we'll talk about some even better stuff all the way over in July.
More
it's a
crocs.
real ramp up. We're ramping up to the it's like how a comedian will have an opening act before the main attraction.
See, the phrase that comes to my mind
Croc and Snake
is you should put your best foot forward.
Ooh.
And since only one of us can do that.
Now that's just plain rude. That's a low blow. Listen, I don't make fun of you for not being able to give live birth. Anyway, join us in June and July for more of this nonsense. See ya.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Common Descent podcast. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and check our WordPress blog for pictures and links after each episode. Huge thanks to our patrons whose support helps keep this podcast running and who get access to bonus goodies on Patreon. The song you're hearing is called On the Origin of Species by Protodome, which we found at ocremix.org. Thanks again for listening. We hope you'll join us next time.